Hi. Okay, we met. Hello. How are you? Nice to meet you. Oh, very nice. Pictures. Nice to meet you. My claim to fame is Suri's husband. My claim to fame. Okay. Okay, good evening. So really wonderful you came out tonight for this class. Child rearing is no small thing. Child rearing is incredibly exalted. If we had to say one thing that caused God to love Avram Avinu, why did God love Abraham? Well, you would say, God tested him. 10 tests. He went through the Akedah, the binding of Isaac. He was an amazing human being. But when God, in the Torah itself, when God says that he loved Abraham, he loved Avram Avinu, the first of our forefathers, what does he say? He said, Ki yadativ leman asher yitzaveh es bonav acharov. For I have loved him because he commands his children and his household after him. Basically, Avram Avinu focused on child raising. And that's why God loves him, because he worried about his kids. What's going to be with my kids? And of course he had a willing partner in Sarah, the matriarch Sarah, who was an incredible mother. And an argument can be made, and this is not at all a forced argument, that she was more in tune with the subject than he was. It makes sense, right? After all, he was commanded, Avram Avinu was commanded, what Sarah tells you, listen to her voice. So child raising is incredibly exalted. As a matter of fact, there's a verse in Psalms which calls the parent who exerts him or herself, the parent who exerts him or herself in child raising, as the Yedid Hashem, the beloved friend of Hashem. After all, parents are the partner with God. The Gemara tells us that in every child there are 3 partners: father, mother, and God. So the parent partners with God in the creation of the child and in the raising of the child. And therefore, coming out and coming to work a little bit on child rearing is top shelf. It's la'ela la'ela, something which is very, very important. Not only is it exalted, but it's incredibly edifying. If there's one thing that changes a person, one endeavor that changes a person, it's child rearing. A person who decides to have children and has children and puts any effort into raising those children comes out a different person. It has to be. I think personally, if there's any endeavor that has changed me over the years, I hope it's for good. I hope it's for good. It's raising children. You have to. You have to. You are forced to with certain challenges, and it's going to be it's going to cause us to develop. We all start off the project of our lives. We start off with different weaknesses, with different idiosyncrasies, with a whole package. And certain things in life force us to come face to face with who we are and to make choices and to develop and to grow. There is nothing like child raising. I want to read you one account. I pulled this from a magazine many years ago, and I identified with it personally, not because I'm at all like this woman, but I have my challenges, she has her challenges. It is for many of you it'll be shocking, I am sure, especially the women in the crowd. This will be a shocking personal account, a self-portrait. And it's an extreme example of how one develops through child raising, but I think reducing something to not to the absurd, not reducing it to absurdity, but reducing it to to focus on the point is very valuable exercise. Let me read you this self-portrait of a mother. It's called The Blessing of a Mother Who Doesn't Like Children. The woman starts out, I do not like children. I never have. I tolerate my nephews from a distance. One of the most excruciating days of my life was when I taught a play group for an entire hour. I like connecting to people. I like having conversations with some semblance of intelligence and reciprocity, but I don't know what to do with little babies and children. I know people who are the exact opposite, like my husband. He adores babies and children. He befriends strangers' babies while in line in the grocery store, and they swoon at him in return. All of our children know and love him. Our friends' children know and love him. Another friend begs to hold new babies. Not me. I never babysat or taught or ran day camps voluntarily. I was never the maternal type. So obviously, I find my own newborns foreign. Newborns freak me out. They are so incomprehensible and demanding and needing. Oh, by the way, I know somebody like this. It's not a woman, it's a man, but I know somebody like this. Newborns, they don't even smile. My daughter is now 3 years old, and I enjoy her more every day. There are moments of pleasure, but it's hard. Being a mother is very, very hard for me. One night, after a particularly horrid bedtime with a screeching baby and tyrannical toddler, an undeniable truth filled my being. I love being a mother. The realization pulsed through every vein in my body. I am not the happy, clappy, Mother Nature type of person. I am too, TOO, vocal and honest about the challenges of motherhood. Sure, there are wonderful things, like huge smiles when my baby wakes up, the way he melts into my arms at bedtime, my daughter springing into my arms after school and telling me that I am her sweetheart, watching her learn sophisticated negotiating techniques and dancing with her in the morning. But there are equally, if not more, hard things, like never waking up naturally, and crumbs and toy cars and old milk on my bed, and never being independent, and never reading a book. So I did not know where this very enlightened thought came from until I looked a few years back. I was not always the sort of person I am now. I now consider myself reasonably kind and decent. I am no modern-day holy woman, but I am generally nice to my circle of friends and family. But this wasn't always so. I was a hideous teenager. I was aggressive, angry, hostile. I struggled to connect to people. I was outgoing, but I was gruff and hard and prickly. I was selfish and self-absorbed. As I got older, I gained self-insight. I mellowed. I shed my hard exterior and became less afraid of my vulnerabilities and others' feelings. I learned how to access the part of myself that is compassionate and kind, but still I harbor a deep fear that I am a horrible person, selfish and unkind. Which brings me to motherhood. The cute perks of raising a small child do not yet outweigh the challenges, but what I love is who I am as a mother. Because even though I am no longer prickly, hostile, and selfish, I still fear that I am. And when I'm with my kids, I am undeniably generous. I am mostly, even if I'm faking it, considerate and compassionate and caring to my children. When making the bottle just right, I am finding patience I never thought I possessed. Although I would give a lot to have a decent night's sleep or curl up in a bed on a rainy Sunday with a book, being a mother does not allow for that. Being a mother demands that I develop a way to transcend my moods and put aside my desire for chunks of solitary time. By so doing, I gain evidence and perhaps I am not essentially unkind. I cannot justly accuse myself of being lazy or useless or selfish. Of course, there are other accusations when I get it wrong, when I shout or lose my temper or ignore my kids, but by spending the majority of my day solely focused on two dependent beings, I have learned to increase my self-control and push myself beyond my limits. I have learned that as I give more of myself, my heart grows wider. I am learning that I also need to give to myself, to give the best to my family. So while I love my children so much that my heart explodes, and they bring me more joy than I knew were possible, I have found an additional and unexpected gift in motherhood. Being a mother means I have finally learned to love myself. Again, an extreme example, but it's true of every single parent. We have expanded ourselves. The choice to have children, and then the working through having the children. I think everyone here knows, anyone who has children here knows what it is, a time when you're caught with a dilemma, where you have to make a decision. How am I going to behave now? I'm a little upset. I'm a little disjointed. I'm a little beside myself. And when we control ourselves, and when we react with love and compassion, we expand ourselves. So, the first thing we talked about was how exalted child rearing is. The second is how edifying it is for oneself. For today, just as an introduction to this series, which I hope we'll be able to meet several times, and I hope, by the way, you will email or call with responses and questions and things that we could discuss. I'm sure that you have much to add that is not covered in the class and areas that you might want to explore. So please be in touch about it. For today, I just want to give an introduction. The building of a human being, the building of a child, the development of a child, I think we can say that there are 5 components. The pasuk, the verse in Tehillim, very beautifully compares the growth of a child to that of a tree. The pasuk says, Asher banenu kinetiyim, for our children are like saplings, magdilim b'neureihem, nurtured from their youth. So let's use that as a model. The child as the infant as a sapling. And let's take a look at what a tree needs to grow. And use that as a metaphor for human development, the development of a child. And again, there seem to be 5 components. When you start from the very beginning, planting a tree, planting a sapling. So you start out with the raw material. And there are different types of things that you can plant. There's different soil, and there's different environments that you have. So too, before we even start with the child that we come, that is born, the child that we have, each child has their own makeup. Each one is different physically, spiritually, psychologically, emotionally. Each child is so different and therefore has to be guided differently. Each child has to be guided differently. My grandmother, may she rest in peace, she had a vignette, a little story about each of her grandchildren, things that they did when they were 1 or 2 years old. And that was her, what you would say in Yiddish is uptight, her definition of each child. And she would always say, what you are at 7, you are at 70. And the story that she had, and the truth is I only remember the little story that she had about me, but it was really incredible. She hit the nail on the head with her little story. Each child, 7 siblings, were very, very different. And therefore they have to be raised different and guided differently. The famous pasuk in Proverbs, verse in Proverbs, Chanoch l'nara pi darko. Train the child according to his way, her way. It's not the same thing. You can have two children that come out of the exact same womb, that grow up in the exact same house, in the exact same city, and the kids are left and right, west and east. The kids are as different as one could possibly imagine. I think many of us have had that experience. And therefore, they can't have the same chinuch, they can't have the same education, they can't have the same training. They're completely different. One is gruff, one is insensitive, things don't matter, and the other one flies into tears at the drop of a hat. And it might not necessarily be a boy, the first one, and a girl, the second one. It might be the other way around. Children are very, very, very different. We need to appreciate each child for who he is. We also need to appreciate the fact that every child is literally God's gift to humanity. If we just gathered here tonight to have a deeper appreciation of that each child is God's gift to humanity, it would be worthwhile. We could go home. Because parents naturally, human beings naturally have ideas, preconceived notions of how things should be. Especially the first child was the superstar, or the brother was the superstar, or my neighbor's kid had the superstar. And then what about my kid, or my second child, or my third child? What about them? They're not the same thing. They're not the superstar. We need to appreciate each one was placed on this planet by his creator, by our creator, at a certain time and a certain place. It's one of the most important realizations that we could possibly have. We say this. I once heard a beautiful lecture by Rabbi Fran from Baltimore, in which he quoted Rav Kook on a line that we say in the Yom Kippur davening at the end of the Shemona Esrei, the pinnacle of our prayer on the Yom Kippur. We say, Elokai ad shelo notzarti eini kedai. We turn to God and we say, God, I get it. I am God's gift to humanity. I am God's gift to humanity. And I realize how important I am, and that I was born in a certain place, to a certain family, to certain parents, in a certain situation. And that's for me. That is my place to be. This is my world. We need to appreciate it about ourselves. And boy, do loving parents need to appreciate it about their child. Their child is God's gift, absolutely God's gift to humanity, what he has, who he or she is. So that's number one. The number one component in the development of a child is realize that a child is not a tabula rasa, not a blank slate, not a blank slate at all, getting very personal. My older brother, he should live and be well, God should protect him. My older brother literally was born on the run. He was walking, I don't want to misspeak, but he was walking at I don't know, 6 months. He was running at 7 months. He was on the move, all right? He has a bundle of energy down to today. He's a bundle of energy. Jet setter, he's flying around the world. That's him, right? I came. My mother said, boy, if it was another one like him, it would have been over. She wouldn't have been able to survive. And I came, and I was quiet, and I wasn't running, and it took me twice as long to walk, and twice as long to speak. And it was like, and she said, oh boy, I redeemed her. Because he cried for the first year of his life. The pediatrician told her, this guy wants to talk. He wants to communicate. He's a talker and a communicator. I'm not making this up. The pediatrician said that. He wants to talk, he wants to communicate, he wants to jump out of his skin, he wants to, right? And I sat in the bassinet playing with the birds. I still have fond memories of those birds that were flying over my head. I was very calm. This was me. This is what it is. Each person has their own way, their own makeup. Number one. Number two is the chinuch, the education. That's really what we came here for, and that's what we hopefully over the series we're going to be focused on. So we as parents or as grandparents are the farmers. We're taking care of those saplings. We're taking care of the plants. We plow, we sow, we water, we nurture, we guide, we teach, we direct. Tonight I want to focus just on two highlights. Something for me which is, I think if we can boil it down to probably the two most important aspects of what we do for our children. I would venture to say that this is what they are. Moshe Rabbeinu, the great Moses, greatest leader we ever had. greatest man that ever lived. At one point, he becomes very, if you could talk this way, frustrated with his people. He's very frustrated. Once again, they've sinned, and God is very upset. And Moshe Rabbeinu makes a shocking declaration to God, shocking declaration. He says, God, you know something? I can't do the job. Take me. Hire other leaders. Make sure those leaders are family. According to the commentary of the Sforno, make sure those leaders are family. I am just not able to carry the load. Why? They don't listen to me. Because they don't realize that I have their best interests at heart. They don't realize it. I'm not their father. If I was a relative, a blood relative, they would be able to get it through their head and their heart that I am there to take care of them, that I have their back, that they can always depend on me. And then the Sforno, that commentary, says that line where he says, that's a father. That's what a father is. That's what a mother is. Says Moshe Rabbeinu, the great Moses, he says, then they would listen to me. If they just appreciated that I am there for them, then they would listen. This concept gives a child confidence. It gives a child a sense of belonging. And it causes the child to listen. More than anything, it causes the child to listen. This is not something that takes a day or a week or a year to get across. There's no words with which we can convey this idea. This takes years and years of behavior. Years and years of behavior. Years and years of showing a child that indeed there is nothing else in the world that is more important than what they need and what they want. Does that mean we're always going to attend to everything that the child needs? No. Look, maybe we'll have a discussion about that. We'll have to talk about that. That's impossible. And that shouldn't be. That would be spoiling a child. But there has to be the message. The underlying thing has to get to the person that I am there for you. That's number one, and we'll elaborate on that over the weeks. That you find in this society. I think parents, by and large, a good parent is pretty good at that. The next one, I don't know about. The next one is, we find it difficult this day and age. As a matter of fact, there are philosophies, and there are educators, and there are experts in child rearing who I don't know if they get it correctly. The second ingredient, the most important ingredient in chinuch, is the ability to say no. From a very early age, no. Why? Because it's not good for you. Why? Because it's wrong. Why? You don't understand it? Well, I do, and I'm your father, and I'm your mother. And the answer is no. I've been in education most of my years, and I find that there are many children today who they couldn't define the word no. They don't know what the word no means. It's so incomprehensible to me. I said no. So you asked me a question. My father, who shall live and be well, he would sometimes look at us after he said no. And he would say to us, why are you surprised that I said no? So why are you surprised? You asked me a question. You asked me a question. You know what that means? That means there are two possible answers. Yes and no. No is equally as valid as yes. I said no. And he would repeat this over and over and over again. It's very important. Very important. Very often, we feel, I shouldn't say parents, we feel that if we say no, we're going to ruin the first ingredient. The first ingredient is we're trying to show the child that we love them. We're there for them. We'll do everything for them. And therefore, because we are so exemplary in the first ingredient of what it takes to educate and guide and train a child, so we give up on the second one. And that could be very detrimental. And to the contrary, to the extent that a parent is successful in the first of these two ingredients, it's a lot easier to say no. I know a family who the mother is a model parent, literally a model parent. And she never had trouble, A, with saying no, and B, this is a real good one, she never had trouble siding with the child get into trouble for something. She never had trouble siding with the people who the children got in trouble with, because the child realized, or her children realized, that the mother had her best interest. She was always there. She dedicated her life to the children. So if the child came home from school, right, and the teacher was furious with the kids and sent a report or something, right, the mother she chose a good school. She believed in the school. So invariably, she told me this, she would take the side of the school. She assumed the school was right until otherwise proven, because her kid was 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. The educators are 30, 40, 50 years old. You assume that and she told me that the children never resented it. Now this is a very tough one. I know the feeling when I got that call, my child. I know that feeling. This is a real tough one. But this is the way she expressed it. She expressed it like she knew that I was always for them, that I believed in them, that I was there for them. So if I said, as a matter of fact, this same mother had a shita. She had a philosophy. The kids would get in the fight. She would not intercede, unless they were going to hurt each other. But if somebody picked a fight, and the older brother or the older sister was going to clobber the younger one, she let it happen. Why? Because she would say, "You picked the fight. What do you want? I should step in." And the kids never resented it. The kids never resented it because they understood. And sometimes it was explained to them. But they didn't have, like, how can my mother let me get clobbered? What do you mean, how can your mother had your best interest, and she's trying to teach you a lesson. You pick a fight with your older brother, you're going to get hurt. Don't pick a fight with your older brother. So both of these components of chinuch, the ones that we're going to focus on tonight, both of them are very important, and they play with each other. They work together with each other. Okay, the third aspect of the development of a person is the environment. This week's Torah reading, we learn about the Kohen. The Kohen, the priest, who there are special laws that the Kohen has. He can't become ritually impure. A regular Jew can. The Kohen cannot. So in discussing these laws about the Kohen, it says, Emar ve'amarta el ha-Kohen. Go ahead, and it says the word Emar, it says it twice. Go ahead and speak to the Kohen. Our sages on that verse say, this is to warn the Gedolim, this is to warn parents about the children. Because you have a child, he goes to the playground, and he has to worry, he's a Kohen, he has to worry about ritual impurity. He can't come into contact with a dead scorpion or something. So, how's the child going to know this? The parent has to help the child. He has to warn the child not to do this. There are two other places in the Torah where we have the Torah saying an extra word, and on that the sages say that the parents have to come, and the parents have to warn the children. The parents have to teach the children, don't get involved in this. Where are the other two? It has to do with various things that are prohibited to eat, things that are not kosher, for everyone, not just for a Kohen. So one of the commentaries asks, So there are three places where we learn that the parent has to take care that the child doesn't involve. Two of them are by regular Jew, not eating bugs, and one is not eating blood, right? And the third one is that the Kohen who doesn't get involved in ritual impurity. But only by the third case, case of ritual impurity, does it say the words emar ve'amarta, say and say. You should say and you should say. The other places, the same idea of the parents teaching the children is said in a different way. Said in a different way. So the commentaries want to know is here in this by the Kohen, why is it said in that different way? Why isn't it said in the same way as it is by the Yisrael? And Rabbi Zalman Sorotzkin explains something which is so important. He says that there are two teachers. There are two groups of teachers for our children. One is parents, you and I, and our messengers, the people who we hire. That's our teachers. That's one group. The other group is the street. And he says sometimes the power of the street, the teaching of the street, the direction of the street can even be stronger than what goes on in the home. He says, what happens when what goes on in the street, what goes on in the playground, what goes on in the school, when that validates and when that strengthens what goes on in the home, then things are great. The parents have it easy. Because here at home, I teach my kids something. They go to school, they go to the playground, they do various media outlets, and they're all saying the same thing. So therefore, what I do is validated. What I teach is validated. But what happens when I teach is not validated out there in the street? Oh boy, then I got trouble. Then I got such a... I teach my kids something, goes to the playground, and the kids laugh at him. The kids say, what? That's what your parents... That's silly. That's old-fashioned. That's nonsense. Then I got trouble on my hands. So when it comes to the two sources of kashrus, so all Jews are the same. Nobody could eat shrutzim. Nobody could eat bugs. Right? So my kids learn in my house not to eat bugs. They go to the playground, and the other kids are concerned about eating bugs too. So I don't have to work very hard. But what if I'm a Kohen? If I'm a Kohen, I have my own law. I have to worry about, my kids have to worry about what they don't have to worry about. So they'll mock, what? You're worried about touching a dead scorpion? Oh, that's so ridiculous. That's so silly. So I have to work doubly hard. Says Rav Zalman Sorotzkin. What an amazing lesson for us. If the street is strengthening what we are teaching, then life is easy. More often than not, it's not. And more often than not, the street is in our house. It's very difficult. My wife and I have a friend who she has 10 children, and she lives on a farm in Iowa. There isn't a Jew for miles. Miles. So what has she created? She happens to be a radiologist, anesthesiologist in a big hospital nearby. Her husband, I think, is a farmer. And they have their own little family. And there's no street. There's no playground. It's their house. She and her husband, they self-teach the children, homeschool the children. There's no street. Everything is very closed. Most of us don't have such a thing. There is a playground. There is a school. They go someplace else. So therefore, how careful it is, how important it is to find the right environment for our children. It's very important. And when the environment is not strengthening what we're teaching, so we have to work double time. We have to work overtime. I think for many of us here, I found it's strange. People say to me, "Oh, how could you live out of town?" I say, "How could I live out of town? How could you live in town? Your child's being raised by the pizza shop. Your child's being raised by the streets of Flatbush and Lakewood. My family is here. They're in my house. And if they're not in my house, I know exactly where they are. If they lived in Flatbush, they'd be running amok. I wouldn't be able to stop them. And therefore, as far as chinuch, as far as education and guidance and my input, I have a much better here than you have there. I guarantee you. What do we have? We don't have the pizza shop. Oh, we have Capri. It's a beautiful pizza shop. I don't think anyone's going to worry about hanging out in Capri. I haven't heard any issues. Have you heard any issues? One day we'll be so big, we're going to have issues with the pizza shop and the burger joint, and then we'll have issues. It's going to be hangout, the boys, the girls. It's going to be an issue. Okay, we should have such a problem, right? Or maybe we shouldn't. But anyway, so it's a beautiful situation. But that's the model. The model is to be able to control, and it's a Herculean task. It's a very hard task, especially this day and age. Like I said before, the street is in the home, right? We have all the media, we have internet. It behooves us. It's a great obligation to filter it out, to see what's coming in. What are our children being taught by society, by the media? Is it strengthening our values, or is it items which are inimical to the things that we believe? So these are the two great teachers. The two great teachers are parents and their messengers, teachers, and then there's the environment. And boy, we have to control that environment. So the fourth aspect is our partner in raising our child. And that, like I said before, is God. A major part of raising children is to enlist the help of God on a regular basis. It's left out of the picture often. To turn to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and say, God, help me. Help me. Let me have the strength. When I am in a situation where I'm a little nervous about how I'm behaving, give me the strength. I didn't sleep last night with my feverish child, and now who knows how I'll act with the other kids. Give me the strength. Give the child the guidance. Make sure that on the playground he's getting the right messages. Please see to it that my next door neighbor, it is a good situation. Let me be in a good situation. There's so much to be mispalel for. There's so much to pray for. You know, there's a great Gemara at the end of Tractate Nida, which goes to a number of situations. It says that the men of Alexandria, they came to one of the great rabbis with many questions. And each time he gave an answer. And they said back to him, well, many people tried that and it didn't work. How do you do X? He said, well, go ahead and do this and this. They came back, it didn't work. Then, and similarly, they came to him and said, how do you do Y? They came back, it didn't work. And each time he said, yeah, it didn't work. Now go pray. You have to go about your activities and then go pray. One of those examples is having children. The Gemara says, how do you have wonderful children? And the Gemara says, well, work hard at it, and then you need to go out and turn to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You need to turn to God in prayer and enlist HaKadosh Baruch Hu's help. The fifth ingredient to the development of the person is something that maybe we forget, and that is the child himself. At the end of the story, there's a child and ultimately an adult who makes their own decisions. How could I have failed so miserably? Unfortunately, in my line of work, I've heard that many times. How could I have failed so miserably? I know an older lady, she's an older lady now. This is her big heartache. This is her big heartache. And what I try to impart to her is, hey, there is nobody in the world that believes that parents have a greater influence on their children than me. One of my mentors was once furious with me when I said, I don't know if I should put this on the recording, but when I said in the middle of a lecture, we were talking about something, and I said, I think most parents should be shot. He became irate. He was so furious with me. But now, 30 years later, I believe even more than I believed it then. I believe it even more. But at the end of the story, you can have the best parents. They could have done amazing work with their kids, nurturing. They could have given their life to the children. But people have a choice in life. At every turn, people have a choice in life, and therefore, at the end of the story, we set the child on their path, and then we see what happens. They ultimately make decisions. So here's the outline that hopefully we'll be working with for the coming weeks. One is there's nature. The child is born with a certain set of genetic makeup that's there, that's set for him. That's what we work with. The second ingredient is chinuch, and that's our education, our nurturing, what we give to the child. The third thing is the environment, which is very critical, and like Rabbi Sorotskin said, it might even be more critical. So boy, we have to watch that environment. We have to watch that environment. The fourth is to make sure that God is always, that we enlist God's help. God's always there. But prayer is so critical. To take a time each day. You know, it might be when you get in for a carpool. You might be driving down the road. Child might be strapped in the back seat, sleeping or crying, and just, well, instead of turning on the radio, to talk to God for a few minutes. This child, God, please. You know, there's certain things that concern us, that unnerve us about the trajectory of the child, the situation of the child. Pray. We're just stam, plainly. Pray for the child. Pray for strength to raise the child, etc., etc. And of course, ultimately, the fifth ingredient to the growth of the child and the development of the child is the child himself. He makes decisions. It's the end of the story. Any questions for today or any comments? Okay, we'll call it a day. And again, please email anything. So if you want to go into any particular areas, you know, I'd love to do that. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you for listening.